Imagine this. You're alone, tucked away in your barn on a quiet, cold night, and suddenly you hear footsteps that shake the ground beneath you. At first you think it's just the wind, but no, it's getting closer, louder. You open the door, and there they are. Three massive women, standing before you like giants out of a forgotten tale. They're bigger than anything you've ever seen, their eyes locked on yours, and you can feel the weight of their gaze pressing down on you. You freeze, your heart races, and before you can speak, one of them leans down with a grin that stretches across her face. You'll sleep with all of us tonight. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what happened to Henry Carter, a young farmer in 1875, living on the outskirts of Hayfork, California. Henry never asked for any of this. He wasn't the type of man to get caught up in strange stories, ghost tales, or wild frontier rumors. But that night, it would change everything, and it all started with three giant sisters, already living in his barn. It was a cold autumn evening when Henry finished his chores. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon, leaving the land bathed in a dull, orange glow. Henry wiped his brow as he fed the cows and checked the horses. Just another day on his farm. As the quiet of the valley settled over him, Henry felt at peace. Little did he know, his peace was about to be shattered by something far beyond his understanding. There were whispers in town about strange happenings up in the hills, but Henry never paid them any mind. The land was tough, the crops scarce, and he was focused on surviving, not chasing rumors. But on that night, something would chase him instead. As he was about to head inside for a hot dinner and a warm bed, a noise came from outside. It wasn't the usual rustling of the wind through the trees or the distant howl of coyotes. This was heavier, more deliberate. Henry stiffened. He strained his ears, trying to make sense of it. Footsteps, loud ones, like a stampede. Henry grabbed his rifle from the barn and stepped out into the crisp night air. The moon was just starting to rise, casting pale light over the barn and fields. He took a few cautious steps toward the sound, his boots crunching on the dry ground. But as he neared the barn door, he froze. What he saw made his blood run cold. Standing in the clearing, framed by the moonlight, were three figures. At first, Henry thought they were men, maybe travelers, maybe bandits. But as his eyes adjusted, he realized the truth. These were no ordinary folks. They were women, but giant women. Each one of them towered over him like the tallest tree in the forest, their heads almost scraping the top of the barn. Their clothing, while tattered and worn, didn't hide the raw power in their frames. Their long, dark hair swayed in the breeze, and their eyes, those eyes, locked onto Henry with an intensity he had never felt before. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as they took a step toward him. Their footsteps seemed to shake the very earth beneath him. Henry instinctively gripped his rifle tighter, but he knew there was no way he could use it against this. His mind raced, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Who are you?" Henry finally managed to stammer. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. The eldest of the three women, her face marked by years of hardship and wild living, smiled. It was a strange, unsettling smile, like she already knew the answer to a question Henry hadn't asked yet. "We are the Windward sisters," she said, her voice deep and resonant, almost as if it was carried on the wind itself. "And we've come for you." Henry blinked, his mind struggling to catch up. "What do you want?" he asked, his throat dry. "Oh, don't be shy, little man," the woman continued, stepping closer. "You've been living here alone for far too long, haven't you? Well, now you're going to have some company." Henry's stomach churned. He wanted to run, to bolt into the barn and lock the door behind him, but his legs felt like they were made of stone. These women, no, giants, were standing right in front of him, and he had no idea what they were capable of. As they moved closer, Henry felt a chill down his spine, as if something much bigger than the sisters was at play here. Something that had been waiting for him, waiting for this moment. And then, just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, the eldest sister spoke again, her voice a low rumble that seemed to echo in the valley. "You'll sleep with all of us tonight," she said, her eyes glinting with something that Henry couldn't place. something dangerous. What did she mean? Was it a threat, or was it something else? One thing was for sure. Henry's life was about to take a turn he could never have predicted. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. "You'll sleep with all of us tonight," the eldest sister had said. Henry's mind raced. He could feel his heart hammering in his chest, and his palms were slick with sweat. What kind of madness had he walked into? For a moment he stood frozen, his rifle still clutched tightly in his hands. He wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension. But all that came out was a dry, raspy cough. The wind had picked up, sending the dry dust swirling around his boots. The giant women stood, unmoving, watching him, with eyes that seemed to see straight through him. The eldest woman, towering over him, took another step forward, her large boot thudding heavily against the ground. She was close now, too close. Henry could smell the earth on her, the dust, and something else, something wild, like the scent of a storm brewing on the horizon. She leaned down, her eyes locked on his, and spoke again, her voice calm but firm. "You're alone here," she said. "A man can't live in the wilderness by himself forever. You need us." Henry swallowed hard, the knot in his throat tightening. He wanted to protest, to deny it all, but something in her gaze kept him rooted to the spot. This wasn't just some wild tale or fever dream. This was real, and these women, these giants, weren't going anywhere. "I don't," Henry began, his voice shaking. But before he could finish, the middle sister cut him off. "You'll learn," she said, her voice softer but no less commanding. Her eyes glimmered with an ancient knowledge, like she knew something he didn't, something about the land, about the sisters, about him. "This place, it's been waiting for you, waiting for us." Henry's head spun. What the hell were they talking about? He didn't ask for any of this. He had a farm, a simple life. And now these massive women had just dropped into his world like thunder. But the eldest sister didn't wait for him to process it all. She grabbed him by the arm, her grip like iron, and pulled him inside the barn. The other two sisters followed, their footsteps shaking the ground. The barn was dimly lit by the flickering light of a lantern, casting long shadows that danced on the wooden walls. Henry tried to pull away, but the giant woman held him firm. "Come on, boy," she said with a smirk. "The night's just beginning." Inside the barn, Henry's mind raced. He couldn't escape. Not physically, not mentally. They had him cornered. He could feel the heat rising from their bodies, the tension in the air growing thicker with each passing second. The sisters circled him, their eyes never leaving his, and Henry felt more and more like prey, like something they had been hunting for a long time. The eldest sister took a seat on a pile of hay, her long legs stretching out in front of her. The middle sister stood beside her, her arms crossed over her chest. The youngest of the three remained by the door, watching Henry with a strange, unreadable look on her face. "Why are you doing this?" Henry finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The eldest sister smiled, a wicked grin that sent a chill down his spine. "It's not about what we want from you, boy. It's about what you want from us." Henry frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" The middle sister leaned forward, her face hard and calculating. "You've been alone for too long. You've been running from something. We know it. We can feel it. You're just like us. Lost." Henry tried to take a step back, but the youngest sister closed the gap, standing in front of him with a strange, almost predatory look in her eyes. She wasn't threatening him physically, but the way she looked at him made him feel like he was standing in front of a wild animal. "Lost?" Henry asked, his voice hoarse. "What do you know about being lost?" The eldest sister chuckled, her laugh echoing in the barn. "We've all been lost, boy. This is your chance to find your way back, to find a purpose, to have something, or someone, to hold on to." Henry's chest tightened as he listened to her words. His mind was still reeling from the sight of these women, their sheer size, their power, their presence. And now they were talking about purpose? He opened his mouth to speak, but the youngest sister raised a hand to silence him. "The question isn't what you can do for us," she said softly. her voice almost a whisper. It's what we can do for you. Henry stared at her, trying to make sense of it all. These women, these giants, were offering him something, something he wasn't sure he could trust. But what other choice did he have? He had nothing left. His farm was barely surviving. His family had long since passed. He was alone, and now these strange women were here, offering him something he couldn't quite understand. The eldest sister's voice broke through his thoughts. The deal is simple, boy. You stay with us, you share your bed with us tonight, and we'll share with you what you need. Why? Henry asked, his voice cracking. Why me? She looked him over, her eyes lingering on his face, then on his hands, worn and calloused from years of hard work. Because we've been waiting for you. As Henry stood there, the weight of the moment pressing down on him, he felt something stirring within him, something primal. He had no idea what these women were really offering. He didn't know if he could trust them. But as the eldest sister slowly stood up and reached for him, he realized one thing for sure. He wasn't leaving this barn tonight. Not by himself, and whether he liked it or not, he was about to find out exactly what kind of deal he was really making. The barn creaked as the wind picked up outside, rustling the hay and dust in the air. The lantern flickered in the corner, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Henry could feel the weight of the moment. There was no turning back now. The eldest sister's large hand reached out, pulling him closer. Her fingers were strong, like iron, but there was something else behind her grip, a kind of warmth, almost protective, if not a little possessive. Henry couldn't deny the power that radiated from her, from all three of them. He had never felt so small, so insignificant. You're not going anywhere, she said, her voice soft but final. Henry's heart raced. He had thought he could escape, but this barn, the very land beneath his feet, seemed to be holding him in place. The sisters were like the earth itself, ancient and unyielding. The middle sister, with her dark eyes, watched him closely. You'll understand soon, she said, her voice low and almost comforting. You'll see why we've waited for you, why you had to be here. Henry's throat tightened. He couldn't process it all at once. What did they mean? Why him? Why tonight? Before he could gather his thoughts, the youngest sister stepped forward, her face like a shadow in the dim light. Sit, she commanded. You've come to us, so now you will stay. Henry hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to leave. But his legs wouldn't move. The eldest sister guided him toward the pile of hay where they had been sitting, the barn suddenly feeling too small, too crowded. The air was thick with something he couldn't name. I don't understand, Henry whispered, his voice barely audible. Why me? Why are you doing this? The eldest sister sat next to him, her giant frame making the hay look fragile under her. Her eyes softened for a moment, and Henry thought he saw something human in her, something more than just the force of nature she appeared to be. You're a man, alone in the world, she said, her words measured, like she had spoken them 100 times. The wilderness is unforgiving. It takes what it wants. But we offer something different, something you'll need more than anything else. Henry felt the pressure on his chest grow heavier. And what's that? The youngest sister stepped closer, her expression hardening. We offer connection, strength, protection, all the things you've been missing. At that moment, Henry's mind began to race. He had come to this barn looking for shelter, maybe even a bit of peace. But now, in the presence of these women, that shelter felt more like a prison, and the peace seemed so far out of reach. The middle sister finally spoke, her voice slow and deliberate. You'll live here with us. You'll sleep with us tonight. And in return, we'll offer you something you won't find anywhere else. The question is, can you handle it? Henry looked at her, feeling the weight of her challenge in every word. Handle what? She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. What we can offer you isn't just a bed. It's power. It's survival. You'll be stronger, more than you've ever been. But she trailed off, her eyes gleaming. It comes with a cost. The youngest sister's eyes met his, and for the first time Henry saw something vulnerable behind the predatory gaze, something haunted. Her voice was almost a whisper, as if she didn't want the others to hear her. The cost is more than just staying with us. It's a part of you, your soul. Henry's stomach churned. He couldn't breathe for a moment. My soul! The eldest sister smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only the coldness of the truth. You've already made a choice, boy. You stepped into this barn. You'll sleep with us tonight, and from now on, you'll belong to us. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Henry recoiled, standing up quickly, but the giant women didn't move. They watched him, calm, unflinching. No! Henry's voice cracked. I didn't come here for this. I just wanted a place to sleep, a place to rest. I don't need this. The eldest sister stood, her towering figure casting a shadow over him. You don't get to choose anymore, Henry. You're ours now. And in the morning, you'll see. You'll understand why we needed you. Henry stumbled back, feeling like the walls of the barn were closing in on him. His mind raced. How could he have been so naive? How could he have walked into this? What had he gotten himself into? But then just as quickly as the tension had built, the middle sister stepped in. Her voice was softer now, more coaxing. You'll come to realize this was meant to be. You're a part of this land now, Henry, and we've waited for you. This is just the beginning. Henry took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but it didn't help. The walls of the barn felt like they were closing in even tighter, and all he could hear was the beating of his own heart. As he looked at the sisters, standing tall and proud in the dim light, he realized he had made a choice he couldn't undo. He was trapped in this nightmare, whether he liked it or not. Henry couldn't sleep. The barn, once a place of refuge, now felt like a tomb. The sisters had insisted that he sleep with them, an impossible, absurd request that he had no idea how to refuse. They hadn't given him a choice, and as he lay there in the hay, the weight of their words pressed against his chest, suffocating him. The sisters sat on the other side of the barn, quiet as shadows. The flickering light of the lantern barely illuminated their figures, but Henry could feel their eyes on him, heavy with something he couldn't name. He shifted, restless, trying to block out the thoughts racing through his mind. He had to get out, but deep down he knew he was trapped. There was no escaping now. He had crossed a line when he stepped into their barn. There was no going back. Finally, the eldest sister broke the silence, her voice deep and commanding. Henry, she said, her words like an echo in the still air. Come here. His heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, but they were laced with something far more dangerous. Slowly he stood up, his legs shaking beneath him, and made his way toward the three women. They watched him like hawks, their expressions unreadable. The middle sister, who had been quiet up until now, spoke next. You've made your choice, she said softly. Now we show you what you've agreed to. Henry's throat tightened. What was she talking about? What had he agreed to? He didn't understand any of this, didn't know why they were doing this to him. The youngest sister stepped forward, her eyes wide with something like anticipation. You'll understand soon, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You'll feel it. Henry's breath caught in his throat as the eldest sister rose from her spot, her massive frame towering over him. Her gaze was fierce, and for a moment, he felt like a rabbit caught in the gaze of a wolf. She reached out and grabbed his wrist, pulling him closer. Her grip was strong, unyielding, and there was something in her eyes that terrified him. You don't understand yet, she whispered, but you will. Tonight we share everything with you. The strength, the power, everything. Before he could speak, the other two sisters stepped forward, each taking one of his arms, leading him to the center of the barn. The air was thick with tension, and Henry's pulse raced as they circled around him, their eyes glinting with a hunger he couldn't comprehend. The eldest sister stopped in front of him, her hands placed firmly on his chest. Close your eyes, Henry, she instructed. Let go of your fear. Let go of your doubt. Despite his instinct to resist, something about her voice was soothing, compelling him to obey. His body felt heavy, as if something inside him was slowly being drawn out, like a magnet pulling at his soul. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. And then, in the space between breaths, he felt it. The pull of something far greater than himself. It was as though the barn itself was alive, the walls whispering, the hay crackling with energy. Henry could feel it in his veins, in his bones, the power coursing through him. The sister's words echoed in his mind. This is your choice. This is your future. The youngest sister's soft voice reached him again, whispering words that chilled him to the core. Now you know what it feels like. This is the price of what we offer, the power you can have. But it comes with a cost, Henry. A deep, dark cost. Henry's body shook as he tried to break free from the grip they had on him, but the more he struggled, the tighter their hold became. The eldest sister leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "This is only the beginning," she murmured, her voice sending a shiver down his spine. "You'll feel us inside you. You'll understand soon enough." For what seemed like an eternity, Henry felt trapped in a whirlwind of sensations, his mind spinning, his body racked with strange, unfamiliar power. It was as though the barn had become a living, breathing entity, pulling at him from all sides. The sisters' presence overwhelmed him, their touch searing into his skin, their whispers filling his mind. And then just as quickly as it had begun, everything stopped. The barn returned to its quiet, dusty stillness. The only sound was the faint rustle of hay and the heavy breathing of the sisters. Henry opened his eyes, his vision blurred. His heart raced, and for a moment, he wondered if he had dreamed it all. But when he looked down, he saw the truth, the power that had filled him, the weight of it still heavy on his chest. The sisters stood before him, their faces unreadable, waiting. He swallowed hard, his voice shaky. "What did you do to me?" he asked, his words barely a whisper. The eldest sister gave him a dark smile. "We didn't do anything to you, Henry. You did this to yourself. You accepted the price, and now you'll live with it." Henry's stomach twisted. He had made a deal he couldn't understand, and now he was bound to them in ways he couldn't escape. The youngest sister stepped forward again, her voice soft. "You'll see, Henry. You'll understand the power we've given you. But remember, everything comes with a price." Henry didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. The barn felt heavier now, the silence suffocating. The sisters were watching him, waiting for something. He didn't know if he was ready to accept this power. But deep down, he knew he didn't have a choice. The price had already been paid. As the minutes ticked by, Henry felt the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The sisters were silent now, their eyes trained on him as though they were waiting for something. But Henry had a question of his own. "Will I ever be free of this?" he asked quietly, his voice almost lost in the thick air of the barn. The eldest sister stepped forward, a wicked gleam in her eye. "Freedom, Henry?" she said softly. "You'll never be free, but maybe that's what you wanted all along. A place to belong." Henry's heart raced again. What had he really gotten himself into? The barn was quiet, eerily so. Henry stood alone in the center of the space, his pulse still hammering in his chest. The sisters had stepped back, their shadows hanging heavy on the walls like an ominous specter. The air felt thick, as though the very atmosphere was suffocating him with the weight of the power he had just inherited. He could still feel it, deep inside him, like a beast waking from its slumber. The raw force of it twisted and coiled within him, pressing against the walls of his consciousness. It was an intoxicating feeling, the kind that could make a man feel like a god, but Henry knew better than to embrace it. He had been warned, hadn't he? There was always a price to pay for power, and this wasn't just any power. It was the kind that consumed a man whole, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. The sisters stood at the edge of the barn, watching him, their eyes filled with a mixture of expectation and something darker, perhaps even pity. They knew what Henry was feeling. They had been where he was now, had felt the weight of the burden they had placed upon him. But unlike them, Henry wasn't sure he could bear it. "You've felt it now, haven't you?" The eldest sister's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "The power inside you. It's yours, Henry, but it's also a part of us. And now that you've taken it, you are bound to us forever." Henry opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He was trapped. There was no denying that now. He had made a deal with the devil, and while he hadn't known it at the time, the consequences were becoming clear. The youngest sister, who had been quiet up until now, stepped forward. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, as if she had seen something terrible. She didn't speak, but her body language told him everything he needed to know. She was waiting for him to do something, anything to acknowledge the reality of what he had just stepped into. He could feel the tension in the air. The sisters were waiting for him to ask the one question that had been on his mind since he first stepped foot in this cursed barn. "What now?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried a weight that hung in the air like an anchor. The eldest sister stepped forward, her face hard and unforgiving. "Now you understand. The power we've given you, it's not just for strength, it's for control. You control the land, the people, everything that breathes around you. But with that comes a responsibility, Henry. You cannot undo what's been done. You cannot walk away from it." Henry's chest tightened. The power pulsed within him, like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. He had never asked for this. He never wanted to be more than just a simple man working the land. But now, everything had changed. He wasn't just Henry anymore. He was something else. "Can I stop it?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Can I undo what I've done?" The eldest sister shook her head slowly, her expression unreadable. "No, once you've accepted it, you cannot turn back. You've sealed your fate, Henry." Henry took a step back, the weight of her words crashing into him like a tidal wave. "What happens if I refuse?" he asked, though deep down he knew the answer. There was no refusing. There was no escape. He was bound to them, to this power, for better or worse. "You can't refuse," the middle sister spoke for the first time, her voice cold. "Refusing would mean death, Henry, a fate worse than anything you could imagine." Henry felt his stomach twist. The room seemed to spin around him. He had to get out of here. He needed to breathe. But no matter how far he ran, the sisters would always be there, watching him, controlling him. As the night wore on, the reality of his situation settled deeper into Henry's bones. The sisters didn't leave him alone, not for a second. They were always watching, always waiting for him to succumb to the temptation of the power they had gifted him. It was a power he could feel now, like a fire burning within him, threatening to consume him whole. It wasn't just the strength that he had gained. It was something darker, something that gnawed at his very soul. He could hear whispers, faint and distant, as if the barn itself were alive, speaking to him. The power, once a thrilling sensation, now felt like a weight he couldn't bear. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered to himself, the words barely escaping his lips. The youngest sister approached him, her face softening for a moment. She reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "None of us asked for it, Henry," she said gently, "but we carry it. We bear the burden because we have no choice. And now, neither do you." The words stung. Henry wanted to push her hand off, to yell at her, to scream that he didn't deserve this. But he couldn't. The power inside him, the power they had given him, kept him tethered to them, to this place. He had no choice but to stay. "What do you want from me?" Henry's voice broke as he spoke, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "What do you want me to do?" The eldest sister stepped forward once more, her eyes narrowed. "We don't want anything from you, Henry. You've already given us what we wanted. Now it's your turn to decide what you want in return." Henry's breath caught in his throat. What did he want? What could he want now that everything had changed? The power, the land, the sisters, everything was intertwined, and he couldn't see a way out. As the hours passed, Henry knew there was only one choice left. He could accept the power, take control of everything and everyone around him, or he could walk away and live with the consequences of his decision. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't walk away. There was no going back. "All right," he said, his voice steady now, despite the turmoil inside him. "I accept it. I'll live with it." The eldest sister smiled, a dark, knowing smile that sent a shiver down his spine. "Good," she said. "You've made the right choice. You'll learn to embrace the power, just like we did." Henry nodded, though his heart was heavy with doubt. But deep down he knew he had no other choice. The sisters had won, and now he was theirs. Forever. If you're as captivated by this wild frontier tale as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories from the Old West. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in Henry's shoes? Would you have embraced the power or walked away? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Until next time, partner, keep your fire burning and your spirit wild.